Okay, so this is a quick video just looking at the basics of weight shifting and why it's really important to learn. So this is in its really basic form, which we use all the time, but people just don't realise it, and that's when we have to move into a single leg stance. So you see, for me to get onto my right side and now on my left side, see how my body has to move to that side. So when I'm walking and I'm breaking it down here, I have to have that point where all of my weight is moving to that leg, because otherwise I won't be able to effectively move. Now this is when I'm moving like in a wood chop exercise where we're bringing in this exaggerated sort of weight shifting as I'm taking you through these different moves here. You can get to see how important it is. But if I take it right back to the beginning, just me moving, if I play this real slow speed, you'll see how, for me, just to shift, I know I want to get on my right leg, but so before it even happens, I had to move everything there, and my whole weight is not, if I have anything that's compensating, I'm probably going to fall out to the side, or I'm going to wobble around and lose my balance, maybe my foot lifts off. There's so many things that could happen here, and I'm not even really exercising, I'm just standing on one leg, but you can see why so many injuries are created in this movement. So like knee injuries are very common because the shifting, like there's like a torsion that's happening around and it's shearing through the knee. Obviously lower back and hips problems, you even got uneven shoulders, so all the lateral pelvic tilting stuff we see happen in this particular movement. And if you are inefficient at doing this, then walking is going to be a real problem for you. So now as I move to my left side, and this is, I'm playing this at like a quarter of the speed as what it normally should be, just so you can see what happens when I have to move my weight. So for me so I've got nice alignment through that leg there. I'm not uneven through my shoulders, nothing's tilting, no loss of balance. All right, so now that's easy to do when I'm like that, but when we're walking, people take for granted that these sort of things don't happen quite easily. So having exercises that assist you in developing to become more efficient are important, so that you can get to that point where I'm in that walking phase and I trust that right leg so I can walk at a good speed or take bigger strides, and obviously for running and that as well. So learning how to get this weight shift. Now if I'm also moving for like throwing or change of direction in sports, I need a much more, even playing golf, there's a lateral weight shift, and this movement here is basically exaggerating it, so you get an idea of just how important it is to learn this skill. And you won't, most of the exercises that we work in, like, or people are familiar with, are working in this sagittal plane, so everything's forward and back, but nearly all the injuries happen in the frontal plane, which is moving side to side, or the transverse plane, which is rotation. And the rotation in the frontal plane is really, you'll always see movement of weight shifting required. So even on this part here, which is kind of mimicking a running action, see now I've got my upper body rotating, but all my weight had to shift to my right leg in order for me to effectively come up and balance and then take off like in a running action, as you see there. So if I'm doing it on the left side now, see how the weight had to shift to the left leg, but my upper body had to rotate, because that's what would create the motion to make me move efficiently and powerfully fast in a forward direction. But none of that can happen if I don't have an effective weight shift to begin with, because this happens before that. All right, so having exercises that develop it, strengthen it, make it efficient and make it faster are really, really important. So some of these multi-joint things that I've been sharing lately, and I've done many times in the past when I've talked about the slings, because you'll see all the slings developed in this. So this is like working right through the posterior sling through here. So the lat on this side working through the posterior sling here. If I was throwing something, it'd be an anterior sling, but because I'm sort of in that running, walking action, it's basically that wind-up action that's being really driven by the glutes and the lats on the opposing sides. And the core, obviously, is the thing that links those two together. That's what gets the lower body and upper body working in sync with each other. All right, so there's a lot more to weight shifting than people realise. So I'll have a look at a couple more examples with some of these other videos that I've done recently to help you understand why I'm doing it. It's not for to make it look fun. It's because it has a specific purpose on improving walking. All right, so let's have a look at a couple of those. Okay, so following on from what we were just looking at, if I was to break down the weight shifting to really see it, and probably for yourself right now to really feel it, is using this kneeling inline lunge drill, which I've shared many times before. It's deceptively very hard. Now, the only disadvantage of this, it does take out any feet involvement. So if you have poor foot stability or poor foot control, this doesn't really address that, but it does address the factors going on at the hip and through the core, and the ability to weight shift. So you'll see when I do this drill, so all I have to do is really just try and get my foot right in front of my knee. That's why it's called an inline lunge. So by narrowing my base of support, it makes my body extremely unstable. So you can see me rocking side to side. Now, for people who can't do this, you'll see right there how I have that feeling of, for me to move my right leg then, and now in this case for me to move this left leg, see how prior to me just doing that, before I've even lifted my leg, see how I'm having this rocking feeling to my right hand side. So that means that all of my body has to shift over to the right so that my leg basically firstly has enough room to be able to swing through, but also has a stable enough base that I can do it without falling to the ground. So either falling out to the side or to the front. So this is why this is a very difficult drill for someone with walking dysfunction or older adults with a falling predisposition. So this drill actually mimics the action of falling. Now, with my hands out to the side, it's actually a lot easier. By putting my hands on my head, I lose a bit of that extra core control that my arms were giving me. Now it places more stress through my core, and most importantly, it teaches my hips to be a prime mover as opposed to being a stabilizer and applying stiffness. So it's often where you see people developing stiffness in their hips as a method of trying to keep their body stable, but it does a good job of that in a way, but it comes at a high price. You can't move. So you see how it's really not a good idea to let hips get stiff like that, or else I'll never be able to do things like this, which is really relating to walking. So this is an extremely good drill to learn how to do the weight shifting, especially if you have trouble with the single leg stance, which is what I'll show you now, which is kind of the more advanced variation of what we were just doing. So this is where I've got like a hurdle, and I'm putting a stick on my back to basically keep my core a bit more rigid. I can't move around. I have to have that. And again, you'll see this weight shift. Now this is a little bit more difficult because I have the issue of trying to get my hip high enough because of the height of the hurdle here. All right, so I have to have that shift of weight. As you can see again, all of my weight now is on this left leg. So I have to have I'm not in a straight line. I'm sort of, you see, if I was in a straight line, I'd be there, but if I did that, I'd just fall over here. So I have to have that shift to the left so that my right hip can lift high enough to get my foot over the hurdle. All right, so, and then this is just an example of why it's important to develop a weight shift, because everything that happens on my right side needed to happen on the left side. And now for everything to happen on the left side has to happen on the right. And I think I make a mistake on this one where I kick the hurdle with my left hip. So I was a little bit sloppy with my leg lifting up. So maybe the stability on my right leg wasn't good enough. Compromising, maybe the mobility on my left leg just wasn't good enough, maybe both. But at the end of the day, I can never do anything with my left leg if my right leg isn't stable enough. And it's not necessarily about its strength, it's more its stability and its control. All right, so now following on with sort of the more dynamic things, so obviously I'd probably start off with single leg deadlifts and the stationary drills. But if I want to progress into the more moving things. So if I want to exaggerate the weight shift, this is where the wood chop really does emphasize, because I'm now moving in that transverse plane, so I'm moving left to right instead of moving forward. So you can see, in order for me to do this, I have to move all of my weight to my left leg here, because my left leg is the power leg, so that I can transfer the weight across me like that. No different to what I would do, as the name suggests, a wood chop, cutting a tree down, or playing baseball, or playing tennis, golf. Everything is about the transfer of weight from one side of the body to the other. So the legs are the engine room, and the core is really just providing the extra rotational stiffness and ability to do that. But none of that will happen if the legs aren't doing the right thing. Now, if I'm sort of moving that now into a more of a dynamic thing, specifically for walking, and this is where it comes into that anterior sling that we were talking about before. And this is quite a powerful movement. Now, when you first see this, it looks like I'm just punching forward, but there is actually a point where I'm actually going backward very sort of briefly, like a load up, so that I can go punch straight forward, right? So you'll see if I play this now. So I'm really powering off the left leg into the right leg. So it's kind of like a throwing action, but it's really breaking down a running action mid-stance. All right, so it's a wind up into the left leg, which is really the weight shifted all to the left, and then it moved to the right, which if I had a cable on the other side, I'd just do that with the right hand. All right, so there's big load up, bang, push through. So it's multiple muscles and joints on the go in that one action. So that'd be the anterior sling because I'm punching forward. Now this would be the posterior sling because I'm moving backward. So now I've got a load up on this right leg, and everything through the left arm on the lats here and through the other side here. All right, so now I'm actually, instead of moving forward, I'm moving backwards, but everything is again learning to weight shift. So right here, it's a load up on the right leg, so that I can transfer everything to the left leg. All right, and see how my upper body is rotated. So I've rotated around. You can see my chest quite clearly here, and then when I pull it back, now you'll see my back. See how there's that rotation, see? Because now I've rotated out to the other side. All right, so these are all excellent drills and really improving walking, running efficiency. So anyone who has trouble, and and the beauty, so if you have a walking dysfunction, obviously it's great, but even for people with hip pain, knee pain, they don't use their hips very well. The hips are the key. So obviously you hear everyone talks about the glutes, as I do all the time, and it's hip stiffness. Both of those two things often happen to create poor walking. So as we saw with the inline lunge drill before. So the loss of the weight shift, like you could work individually with stretching and individual strengthening, like hip stretches and glute stretches, or hip extensions and clams, all great drills. Even deadlifts, great drills, but they don't bring into play this dynamic weight shifting as we saw in these more explosive type ones, where has to be a part of the rib cage rotating around the hips, and the hips really loading up, so everything loading into the glute right there, and there's my wood chop feeling of my rib cage rotating, so that I can get this huge force forward, and this leg enough time in the air to plant on this side to keep me stable. So the weight shift is the key into making all of this happen. Now, I've just given you a few examples. There's many others that I could do, and there's not like a rigid formula I would say would work for everyone. These are some of the more advanced versions, just to give you an idea. But as long as you're finding a way, and I've given plenty of ideas on the YouTube before of how to do this, as long as you're trying to find a way to do that and improve its efficiency, you really are going to make big changes to your athletic performance if you're in sports, or just being able to restore function if you've lost function. All right, everyone's bound by the same rules. It just depends on where you're at on the continuum as to what's most relevant to you. All right, but these are not meant to just be fancy exercises. They have a purpose, and that's why I think sometimes people in these videos comment garbage stuff on sort of criticising me, thinking I'm just coming up with fancy things. No, they were actually really trying to mimic the way that we use them when we move really well, all right? And you're trying to improve them. It's just a matter of how far you regress it, if you've got problems, and how far you take it if you're trying to get like real improvement in your athletic performance. All right, so I hope this video gives you some ideas. I hope I haven't rambled on too much, but I was trying to sort of really break this down because I had a lot of questions and feedback that was not necessarily favourable. Anyway, so I hope that this video gives you something that you can use, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one.